ya? Welcome to Happy Rails to ya. My name is Hobo Pap, and I've been riding the rails looking for an adventure to share with you. Boy, have I got a story for you today. Let me find a place to rest these weary bones. We'll see what treasure I've got for you in my bindle. You know, my hobo sack. Come along. Thank you for joining me here in Hobo Pap's Hobo Jungle. I hope you've had a good week. I know I sure have, and I must say, I've really enjoyed all the 4 colors as I've traveled around the country. You know, as I was riding the rails this week, I got to thinking about all the work that goes into running a railroad and getting freight and passengers from one place to another. Now, we often think about the important role of engineers and conductors to keep rattlers riding down the rails, but we don't talk much about those who keep the rails in tip-top shape. Maintenance of way workers, they work hard to keep railroad tracks and right-of-way in working order by doing everything from repairing and replacing railroad track, ties, plates, and spikes, to removing snow, tree limbs, and debris, allowing for safe passage for trains. As Halloween draws closer, this week's adventure tells a story of a maintenance away worker on the Trans-Siberian Railway who has to undo an evil demon's damage to the tracks before the train derails. This adventure of good versus evil is called The Knot in the Tracks and captures the tale of Petrushka's battle against an eerie creature of the night. This story was originally written in Italian by Roberto Piomini and translated to English by Olivia Holmes. The tale was brought to life with illustrations by the award-winning Russian artist Mikhail Fedorov. Come along, let's read. The Knot in the Tracks by Roberto Piomini and pictures by Mikhail Fedorov. Translated from the Italian by Olivia Holmes. In faraway Siberia runs the Trans-Siberian Railroad, 2 rails stretching across a silent and deserted plain from horizon to horizon. The train used to pass just once a week. A railroad worker named Petrushka lived by himself in a house beside the tracks. The only people he ever saw were the passengers on the train that sped by every Tuesday, and they never even noticed him. But he was happy with his lot and spent most of his time walking along the tracks, making sure that the railway was always in good repair. One Tuesday evening, a few hours after the passage of the eastbound train, Petrushka went out with his lamp for a last look at the tracks. An icy wind was blowing, and he wanted to get back quickly to his warm stove and the cabbage soup cooking on it. But Petrushka had his job to do, so he walked eastward along the iron rails. After about 100 yards, he thought he saw a strange flickering light. He walked faster. Then he stopped short with his mouth hanging open while his lamp wavered in the wind. The 2 rails were knotted together like big steel strings. "Ha ha ha! That's a funny joke, isn't it, Brother Petrushka?" said a nasty little voice in the darkness. The startled track walker lifted his lamp. The light fell on a dark, ugly little man with huge, hairy ears and hands bigger than his whole face. He was sitting cross-legged on a rotten old fur rug. "Who are you, and What have you done? Gasped Petrushka. Why ask questions when you can see for yourself? Sneered the little man, the wind splaying his hairy ears. My name is Rashka, and I'm a demon. I may not be much of a demon, but still I've made a nice knot in your rails. The rails aren't mine, wailed Petrushka. They belong to the railroad, and the train has to pass through here. You can't leave them like this, or the train will crash. Rashka made funny grimaces of surprise. Why, what do you know? Who would ever have thought it? Please, Rashka, implored Petrushka, undo the knot. Make me some tea first, said the demon, jumping to his feet. Make me a good hot tea of orange and mint leaves. Then we will see about this little knot. But orange and mint leaves only grow beyond the mountains in the south. It takes 3 days to walk there. Up to it then. I'll wait right here for the tea you've promised me. Petrushka begged and pleaded, but the ugly little monster made no reply. He just lay down on the smelly fur like a dead wolf and went to sleep. With a knot in his chest, the track walker ran home. He filled his knapsack and canteen. Then he loaded his lamp with oil and headed south into the wind. When he fell down exhausted at dawn, he could just barely see the mountains in the distance. He ate a few crackers and berries, slept for a while, then began walking again. At the end of the second day, he reached the mountains and started climbing. At the end of the third, he saw a flowered plain below him and rushed downhill like a waterfall. He ran around madly, picking mint leaves and orange blossoms. Then he started back, sleeping only when he couldn't go any longer. He arrived home late Monday night. He put a pot of water on the stove, let it boil, and threw the leaves and blossoms in. He strained it, then ran along the rails to the knot. The world paled with the light of dawn. Rashka was seated on his rug with a dirty tin cup in his hand. Petrushka poured the tea into it. Nice and hot, the way I like it, said Rashka, wiping his mouth on the filthy fur. And now let's see about this knot. While Petrushka watched, trembling with cold and exhaustion, the demon stood up and passed his big hands over the rails. They loosened like eels and became hard and straight again. Without a word, the demon left, but Petrushka didn't budge. He wanted to see the passing of the westbound train. After about 2 hours, the train did puff along by in the broadening daylight. Not one of the passengers drowsing in the coaches even noticed Petrushka kneeling in the grass. The track walker slept for 2 whole days after that. Then he ate bowl after bowl of cabbage soup and once more took up his life beside the rails. But 1 month later, Petrushka found the tracks knotted again. Rashka was sitting beside them, scratching his belly. What do you want now, demon Rashka? Why have you made another knot? You have to realize, brother Petrushka, that it's easy for demons to do wicked things like this, but much harder for us to do harmless things, like looking for tea leaves, for example, or finding red pebbles to make necklaces. So, asked Petrushka with an aching heart. So, my brother, said Rashka, rocking back and forth. So this knot has got to be untied before the next train passes. I just saw one go by, speeding like the blazes. But the next? Bring me 100 red pebbles from the mountains in the north. the little stones that are good for making necklaces, and I'll untie the knot. But those mountains are 4 days' walk from here. How can I go and come back in a week? The wind goes and comes back again, all in one morning, brother, and the birds in an afternoon. Is a man less than they are? Do what I say. Bring me 100 red pebbles, or this knot will not be loosened. Petrushka fell on his knees in desperation, while his eyes searched the dark for distant mountains. But a moment later, he jumped to his feet and ran back home to prepare his lamp and knapsack. He hiked northward in the night until he could go no further. Then he rested a bit and went on. He reached the mountains in just 2.5 days, found 100 pebbles in 1 day, and made it home in 3 more days. It was less than an hour until the eastbound train was due to pass. He counted the pebbles from his knapsack and put them in a little bag. Then he set off toward the knot, walking in the middle of the tracks. "Welcome back from your stroll," snickered Rashka, roosting in his usual fashion. "Have you brought me the pebbles you promised?" Petrushka handed him the bag without saying a word. Rashka emptied it into his big right hand and began counting with his left. 91, 92, 93. There are 93 pebbles and not 100, he said finally, looking at Petrushka out of the corner of his eye. "The knot will not be untied." "But I collected 100 pebbles in the mountains, and I counted them just now when I got home," exclaimed Petrushka, falling on his knees and holding his arms out to Rashka. "Maybe some pebbles fell out between my house and here." The demon looked at the bag and said, "You're right, there's a little hole. Go find me the missing pebbles." But Petrushka raised his face to the sky and started to beat his chest, shouting, "St. Nikolai, crack the earth wide open if I didn't bring 100 back with me. And now I don't even have the strength to stay on my feet." "All right, brother, be quiet," said Rashka, backing off because the very mention of the saint sent shivers down his ugly spine. "I'll undo the knot and go look for my own stones." The demon tapped the rails and they untied easily. Then, while Petrushka shouted and screamed the names of all the saints in heaven, Rashka scrambled back along the tracks toward the house. He kept his big hairy ears folded shut so as not to hear Petrushka's screams, which made him sick to his stomach. He found the first pebble and then another right in the middle of the tracks. He had just spotted a third when he was run over from behind by the eastbound train and smashed into 1,000 pieces. Demons that drink tea and wear necklaces are mortal, you know. Petrushka stopped shouting and stood up. He was so beat that he could have slept 3 days and eaten 20 bowls of cabbage soup. But as he approached his house, he managed to dance a little jig and croak a happy song. The end. That's The Knot in the Tracks. Boy, that story sure was a thriller, wasn't it? It goes to show you that good always wins in the end and evil loses. Petrushka worked hard to make sure to get the track in good working order, and the demon was punished for his evil deeds, not in the track, trying to cause the train to derail. We can all learn from this story that we must always do the right thing and help out in any way that we can. Now, fortunately, this demon is just imaginary, But I hope the story helped get you in the mood for Halloween, which is just 1 week away. Now, join me next week as we hop aboard the Spooky Express for an unforgettable train ride full of ghosts, goblins, and witches. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, so long. Thank you for joining me for today's adventure. I hope you enjoyed. Always remember, continue riding the rails of your imagination as it will take you on an endless number of adventures around the world. Until next time, this is Hobo Pap saying so long as I go hop on a rattler in search of our next adventure. Happy reels to you.